It all began here in America in 1884 when Coney Island Amusement Park in New York introduced a ride called the Thompson Switchback Gravity Pleasure Railway, which resembled a mining cart on a steep, bumpy hill. Well, roller coasters certainly don't look like that today. I know that you've heard this before, what goes up must come down. But what a way to calm down. But what a way to calm down. I waited all day to ride Hercules, but now I'm not so sure. Wow, what a way to start a summer. Reporting from Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania, this is Mike Wagner for Let's View the News. Did you say the first drop was 157 feet?
It's one thing you gotta feel. Excitement so real. You're gonna go. You're gonna go. You're gonna go for the ride.
Discount coupons available at participating ShopRites.
Hey guys, welcome to the very first of my Planet Coaster Cold Cases, something I've been having a lot of fun creating. My vision for these videos came from my theme park nostalgia, and I basically wanted to take a real-life theme park situation and ask, what if? And bringing back that particular case and exploring and then creating, literally in Planet Coaster, what could have been. And in this cold case, it's a big what if. And as you can tell, this is the case of what if Cedar Fair never acquired Dorney Park in 1993, whose new owners did not upkeep Hercules in the same way or the same yearly retracking? What if that led to Hercules being more enjoyable as well as lasting until RMC had been well established in the coaster industry, creating the perfect opportunity for Dorney Park and Hercules specifically to retake the longest drop of its kind as an RMZ conversion project. But it doesn't really work for a title or for a concept, so this is why I've kept it to the cold case concept. And that's going to stay the same going forward for any of these types of videos. They're all going to be a mix of me talking about and showing you the interesting ride history, sharing my inspirations behind why I wanted to explore the particular case, talking in-game about creating certain elements, coasters, or anything else that might be necessary, and of course a lot of cinematics and POVs. I had a blast making this, so I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you guys on the other side of this cut, and I'll get right into it. Thanks for watching. So as you can see, I actually take a lot of the sourcing from Google Images. I was even on Google Earth a little bit, just to kind of get the actual layout of this track right. What I did initially was I basically painted, you can see the little notches on the ground here, I painted on the terrain a general layout for what Hercules used to be, and then started adding in elements that I thought would be interesting and fun to have in an RMC version of this, as well as, you know, paying tribute to some of the very specific things that I wanted to include on this ride, based on some of the things that I've done and I've ridden. And specifically, starting with that very, very famous JoJo roll, and for those of you who do not know what I'm talking about, Hydra the Revenge, the actual B&M floorless coaster that took over for Hercules, has that signature JoJo roll. Copperhead Strike now has it as well, and I think there's one other coaster. I think in Nickelodeon Universe Indoor Mall Park or something like that. Regardless, I thought it was really important to keep that, given this was a park that I went to a lot when I was younger, and I wanted to keep the element on Hydra that, like, to this day I hold so dearly in my heart. I love that JoJo roll. And it's funny because part of their advertising for it at the time, I remember this when I was younger, they advertised it as the first roller coaster to have a camera that took a picture of you when you were upside down. I don't know why they thought that was a really good point to make, but they did. And as you can see, the second kind of element that I was going to bring into this build was the Steel Vengeance drop. And a lot of the RMC drops look similar, but in particular, the Steel Vengeance drop has like a very, very specific look to it. And I know I have that pre-drop there, and there's really nothing I can do about that, just given that's kind of how that's kind of how it was for Hercules as well. And then of course, there's a ton of RMCs out there that have their own little pre-drop with that little bump of air, so that when you're going over the top of it, it really pulls you over from the back seat. So those are some of the things I wanted to keep, especially the sweeping motion over the lake here. This is one of the most infamous parts of the coaster for being extremely rough and painful. There's actually a special name for this coaster, not too unlike Sky Rush being Thigh Crush, but this one, instead of being Hercules, it was Hurt Your Knees. I actually went into a bunch of just threads from old online coaster communities, and it was really, really interesting to hear what people had to say about this ride when it was, recently opened, rather than when it had already taken its toll a little bit. And I mentioned that there was... let me talk a little bit about this element first. This element here is kind of like the signature element of the ride, in the fact that it's pretty unique. And what it is, it's basically a barrel roll that goes up into the top of the hill, and rather than being a stall or anything that like a typical RMC would, I kind of wanted to be slow at the top, where you can kind of get a really good view at the lake and Steel Force and just the drop itself, really, that you just went down when you're flat on the top of that big element, and then the second half of it being another barrel roll going the opposite way. I thought it was a really cool thing to have on this ride, and I think I'll try something different on whatever next RMC that I create. And I mentioned in the very long "Why am I doing this cold case and what is this cold case about?" that there is some semblance of, if Cedar Fair never took over Dorney Park, that this could have eventually happened. And let me explain what I mean by that. In 1993, Cedar Fair bought Dorney Park, and in a lot of the forums, and particularly one of the people that actually worked at Dorney Park at the time, said that there was basically a drop in the quality of retracking and the profiling of the coaster that was known to have issues early in its life, not just after Cedar Fair had taken over, but specifically it had gotten a lot of work done to it to remedy some of the big problems that it was having with it in the first couple of years up until 1993, so the first 4 years of it being in operation. And something that's interesting to consider here is the company that actually built this ride, the Din Corporation. The same guy who actually opened the Din Corporation was, I forgot his name now, I'll put it here on the edit, but he actually created the Beast, and he did all the track work for the Beast at Kings Island, and then once he was comfortable enough with making it, he then went on to make different rides after that. And so some of the rides in particular that I want to actually touch on, because they have a very similar history to my proposed history for this one, is from the Din Corporation. There was the Georgia Cyclone, Mean Streak, Texas Giant, and I think there might have been one more. But if not, the Georgia Cyclone was recently turned into Wicked Cyclone in 2018. The Texas Giant was turned into the new Texas Giant, clever name, in 2011, and Mean Streak, of course, was turned into Steel Vengeance, and these were all RMC conversions for Din coasters that were nearing the end of their service life. So that kind of thing is actually pretty apparent in why do I think that this thing should have been made in the first place. And then as you can see, I'm constantly sourcing different RMC elements and different coasters out there to kind of make something that's, unique in that I'm kind of creating it, kind of custom, but also in a way that some of the elements are realistic, and where I get creative, I try to get creative in a way that is plausible, if not, it's not unrealistic, it's just a little bit, like I said, I take a little bit of the creative juices and get them flowing rather than pulling all of the cookie cutter elements that I really, you know, I really could be doing on this particular ride. And another thing that I just kind of want to touch on, just building more generally, you can tell in this video versus the one that I showed you before in the cinematics that I don't really have anything around the ride. There's really no people that are riding the ride, the other rides that you have here. There's no path work, there's really nothing, it's just kind of this template. I tend to like working in this kind of template style rather than having to be extremely meticulous about trying to keep things within the confines of something already created. Even within parks that I make, that is typically what I like to do anyways. One of the last things that I wanted to talk about was kind of like the name and the color of the ride that I'm creating. The colors I'm actually keeping the same as Hydra, and I was like, I was so torn between keeping Hydra the Revenge or naming it Hydra Unchained, and like when I'm doing this right now, I'm still not sure what it's going to be, so I guess we'll just have to see what it turns out in the last video. But some of the things I wanted to keep were the color of the ride. This is something I might continue to do. I might change going forward in these cold cases. I'm not exactly sure yet, but one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because I just think that a lot of RMCs and some conversions are a little bit bland in terms of the colors. You know, it takes a lot of effort to do this and actually paint the structure a different color, especially if it's a completely new color, something that RMC has never done before. But they have done it they have painted the structure that they've put onto the old structure if the color had already been there, such as Hakigui, I don't know how to pronounce that, also known as the white whale in Japan, and Georgia Cyclone, I'm pretty sure is a white support structure as well. You can see me just kind of going through and smoothing the track. It took me a really long time to actually get this right. I made a ton of changes to it towards the end of it, but I think ultimately it turned out in a very good place. So we're nearing the end of this time lapse, and we're going to go actually right into more cinematics and POVs. Thank you so much for joining me on this first episode of Planet Coaster Cold Cases. And I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a little bit as well. So thank you so much. Leave a like, subscribe, all of that jazz if you're interested. And leave me comments and let me know what you think about this video. Anyways, thank you so much again for watching, and I'll catch you all next time in Planet Coaster.